Good morning to you. Welcome to NewsViews. I'm Alan Kresse. So how do you protect your personal information? Oh, you've heard about it. Target now saying that pre-Christmas data breach impacted as many as 110 million customers. There's another breach that allowed hackers to collect the usernames and the phone numbers of more than 4.5 million Snapchat users. And now, just as the tax season is approaching, the IRS reporting a jump in thieves stealing Social Security numbers to then fraudulently collect tax refunds. Well, with news like this, many of you may be asking if there's anything that you can do to protect your personal and financial information. Well, joining me today to discuss this very important issue is Professor William Kresse. He is the director of the Center for the Study of Fraud and Corruption at St. Xavier University. And one of the questions I have is, when something like this happens, and let's say you are a Target shopper, and whether you use a credit card or a debit card there, how long do you need to be on the lookout here for the potential that somebody has your information?
As long as you have those accounts open, you are potentially a victim. There have been cases of identity theft, of hacked credit cards, bank cards, where a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years later, they're coming back and attacking again.
If you have these cards and you've used them, all right, and let's say you haven't noticed anything yet, nothing unusual, what should you be looking for?
What you should be looking for is, I tell people, if you used a credit card or debit card at Target anytime from Thanksgiving until about December 15th, check online your credit card statement and your bank statement. Look for any transaction that you don't recognize. It doesn't have to be a big dollar amount transaction. Very often what the bad guys will do after they've stolen a credit card number, they'll go and run a 50-cent transaction through. And what they're doing is testing to see if that account's still open. Because if that account is still open, they can get a higher price on the black markets on the internet where credit card information is bought and sold.
Is that basically what they're trying to do here? That perhaps once they steal the information, yes, they want to sell it to somebody, but they may not necessarily be the ones that are using them later on to make purchases fraudulently?
Not long ago, if credit card information was stolen, it was the thief who went and used it, making purchases, whatever.
At the gas station, maybe down the street.
Exactly. Yeah. Nowadays, these big hacks, they're just buying it to sell it on the black market. They may keep a few good cards for themselves, otherwise they're just selling the information. When you've breached 40 million credit cards and debit cards, and you can't use them all, so you're going to sell off the rest.
We certainly say, how on earth does that happen? How do they do it? With all the security that's there, with all the companies try to do to protect this information, how do they do it? How does that happen?
Well, it's just that there are so many really good IT and computer people who are, if we want to say, on the dark side, okay? Target, frankly, has one of the best internal security departments of any retailer. They are really good. But it just shows that when you're targeted, pardon the pun, by the bad guys, and it's a sort of a virtual international criminal conspiracy.
Okay, well, let's talk about that too. Is this generally something where it's a large organized ring that's responsible for this, or a rather select group of hackers who just know how to do this?
It's a little of both. What you have are really good hackers, but located all over the globe. They probably haven't even met each other except in the virtual world. And together they are, putting together the knowledge and the skills that they have to pull off a scheme like this.
But at some point, I mean, they haven't even met each other, but you're talking about the potential here for tens of millions of people in terms of the information that they gather.
Right.
I mean, for heaven's sakes, you have to, just bringing that together in one spot and seeing what you do with it after you collect it has to be a major operation.
It's a major operation, and there are some thoughts that there might be other criminal organizations involved with this. There might be governments, involved in this. It's a very big thing, and we're just barely breaking the surface of what this is all about.
All right, let's get back to the consumer side of this, though. Sure. Let's say you were a shopper there. First of all, does it make a difference in terms of the type of card that you used with your transactions?
No, it doesn't. Well, it doesn't as far as you potentially being a victim.
Right.
If you used a credit card, we know that some of the credit card data that was stolen has appeared on some of the black market websites selling that data. In fact, we know that after the Target breach, one report was that the number of credit cards being sold on the black market increased 10 to 20-fold.
Really?
Debit cards is something else. For a debit card to be used, they also need the PIN. Now, we know the PINs were stolen, but they were stolen after they were encrypted. It's only a matter of time, though, until they're able to decode it. We haven't heard of any, at least I haven't heard of any use of the debit cards that were stolen from Target. But once they do, the problem with that is, which was the problem with Aldi, Michaels, and Barnes & Noble, they got the debit card number, they have the PIN, they can start making a dummy ATM card and start draining cash out of your checking account.
All right, I'm going to stop right there for a moment because we're going to get to what is the responsibility of the victim here and what can you be held liable for. We'll be right back with more of our discussion in just a moment.
The Florida Keys is home to a protected 2,900 square mile national marine sanctuary, an abundance of wrecks, and thousands of different species of marine life. Learn to dive in the Florida Keys, and you'll open the door to an entirely new world. Visit FAKeys.com.
Who's the guy who can fix your love life?
Figaro, Figaro, Figaro.
The Barber of Seville, starring Nathan Gunn and Isabel Leonard at Lyric Opera.
The ABC7 I team is on the trail of Chicago's most wanted.
This is a guy that's back doing business.
Fugitives wanted for drug crimes.
I'm Chuck Gowdy. What's being done to track them down?
Monday at 10, only on ABC7 Eyewitness News.
Welcome back to NewsViews. We're talking today about preventing thieves from stealing your identity or your personal information. Professor William Kresse is the director of the Center for the Study of Fraud and Corruption at St. Xavier University. Before the break, we were asking, okay, if this happens to you, whether it's your credit card or your debit card, what are you responsible for?
Frankly, the banks and the credit card companies have been very good at, you can go to them. You're technically, legally, you're responsible maybe up to $50, but they've generally even waived that in many cases. But the key is to be vigilant. Keep an eye on those statements. Check several times throughout the month, looking for any suspicious activity, and report it. Now, the big problem between credit versus debit card is with a credit card, if you dispute a charge, don't pay the charge and dispute it with the credit card company. With a debit card, if cash has been withdrawn from your account, now you're bouncing checks and you're getting, overdraft fees.
Well, even more so, the question is, okay, with a debit card, can you get that money back? If you have a debit card, I mean, a credit card, you've got a transaction out there and you can say, I can test that purchase, whatever it was.
Right.
It's kind of out there in the air still pending for a while. Right. With a debit card, they're at an ATM and they're draining your bank account.
They're draining your bank accounts, and most of the responsible banks have been good at putting it back if you can show that it was a false transaction. For example, if you had cash withdrawn from an ATM in Las Vegas and you've never been to Las Vegas, and you can show you were in Chicago at the time, they will eventually put the money back, but eventually is the problem. It's already gone, and you have to prove it to get them to put it back.
You're clawing to get it back.
Right.
So what can people do? I mean, first of all, is there better technology out there? We think that you do everything you possibly can, and then you have a massive security breach like this. What can be done? Anything?
Well, one of the things that's coming down the road is by 2015, all retailers are going to be demanding that you use a credit card that has what's called chip and pin technology, sometimes called a EMV card. I have a photo of what one of them looks like. And what it is, it looks like
I see. Okay, this is that chip, that gold chip that you might see on some cards.
Right, it's got a microchip embedded in the card itself. And on that microchip would be the data and information that now we have on the magnetic stripes on the back. The problem with magnetic stripes is I could walk into any number of stores here in Chicago and buy the machine to wipe a stripe clean on a card and then put new information on it and use that fraudulent card.
So this prevents that?
This prevents this from happening. And what you would do is now when we go to make a transaction, we use the magnetic stripe on the back.
Sure.
You run it through the machine.
You're swiping it there, right?
You swipe it. In the future, you'll take the card with the chip in it and we'll press it into the machine and enter a PIN. Since they can't clone the card, that's your card, and since you're the only one that knows the PIN, it should cut down the amount of fraud. In Europe, where chip and PIN is used, they've reported up to 50% lower numbers of fraud cases.
It's just taken us this long in the United States to come around to adapting this technology? Or?
It's taken a while here. It's a little bit more expensive, but the big thing is we have so many more credit cards in circulation in the United States than anywhere else in the world. Is going to be a major undertaking.
Well, Well, talk about expense, though. What's the cost that we're talking about here in terms of these breaches, in terms of the cost to consumers, the cost to, well, okay, let's talk about Target even, the cost to retailers. This is a reputation issue that they're dealing with now.
Right. Their reputation is being harmed by this. Their stock prices have been impacted. In addition, now in this latest thing where, in addition to these 40 million credit card sales, we know that the bad guys have gone in and breached their databases where they've gotten people's names, addresses, telephone numbers, email addresses. So they've gone beyond that. That's where we get up to this almost $110 million, 110 million customers. And they're going to have to provide those people with a year of credit monitoring services, and that's out-of-pocket
That's costly, too. Should people be suspecting that they're going to be getting calls from people who now have their phone numbers or emails from those who are even phishing for further information, for verification?
Exactly. What the big fear now is they don't have Social Security number, they don't have date of birth. So what they can do is something that's been called spear phishing, where the bad guys will call you up, they've got your phone number, and say that they're from Target, or send you an email saying that they're from Target. It looks like a Target email, but please verify this information and give us your Social Security number and date of birth and your mother's maiden name, and then they're off to the races.
Once that happens, they can do just about anything.
They can damage you completely on your
All right, now, and that's because what I was going to ask you is, would your advice be simply that if you think you've shopped at Target during this time with a card, to simply call your card provider and say, I want a new card, I want a new account?
I think at this point, if you used a debit card, go to your bank and get a new PIN number, because that should take care of that. If it's a credit card, some of the credit card companies, including Chase, I know, have already begun the process of sending out new cards with new accounts. But then, if you've got automatic payments set up with any of your company you work with, you're going to have to go and change all that. It is a huge headache.
Now bills are not getting paid, and they're calling you and saying your account's being suspended because, does this sound familiar? I think we've all been there one time or another.
I think we've all been there one time or another, This is huge. And Target right now, as I say, they've done work. People ask me, is it safe to shop at Target? Probably the safest place around, because they've scrubbed their IT system clean. The problem is, who's next? Because they're not going to let this one go.
Something we all have to watch out for. Professor William Kresse, thank you so much. Good to have you with us. That's going to do it for NewsViews this morning. We hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend and watch those credit cards and your debit cards. We'll get back to the news desk now.